In the year 1190, Roderick of Bordeaux was a man of noble blood, born into a family whose name was whispered in the halls of the great castles of Aquitaine. Though young and idealistic, he was raised in the shadow of his father's expectations. His father, who had once fought in the wars of the king and now awaited the same fate for his son. To Roderick, the idea of war had always been distant, a matter of duty more than passion. But when the call came from Pope Urban II, declaring that the infidel must be driven from Jerusalem, the winds of destiny blew fiercely. Roderick's father had been too old to march to the Holy Land, but he had given his blessing for his son to join the crusade, and with it a piece of his own soul. "Go with God," he had said, his voice raspy from years of smoke and battle, "and prove your worth." The year was 1191 when Roderick, now a knight of the Christian faith, found himself part of the army that laid siege to the coastal city of Acre. His armor glinted beneath the burning sun, its steel reflecting the intense heat of the Middle Eastern summer. The smell of salt water mingled with the stench of death, and the clang of swords echoed across the battlefield. Acre was a city that would soon fall, but at great cost, both to the Christians and the Muslims who fought with equal ferocity for control of the sacred city. Roderick's heart was heavy with uncertainty. His initial enthusiasm had begun to erode, replaced with the harsh reality of what it meant to be a crusader. He had watched men fall, their screams ringing in his ears, their blood staining the ground beneath them. He had seen friends, once bright-eyed and hopeful, now hollow-eyed and weary, their spirits broken under the weight of the endless siege. But still, Roderick pressed on, driven by the ideals of faith and honor. "We fight for Christ," his commander Count Raymond of Toulouse had said. "We fight for the future of the Holy Land." The siege had stretched on for months, the city walls unyielding, the defenders inside determined to stave off their invaders. Every day, Roderick and his fellow knights scaled the walls, hacked at the gates, and fought through the narrow, stinking alleys of the city. With each assault, the odds seemed less in their favor. But finally, after months of relentless bombardment and desperation, the walls of Acre began to crack. The city surrendered. The victory was bitter. The streets, once teeming with life, were now strewn with the bodies of both Crusader and Saracen. As Roderick stood on the bloodied flagstones, surveying the ruin, he felt an unfamiliar emptiness. Had this been the glory he had sought? Was this the purpose of his life, to bring destruction in the name of a distant god? His father's voice echoed in his mind, "Prove your worth." It wasn't long before word came that the Crusaders were to march south, toward the great city of Jerusalem itself. And so they went, crossing the arid hills of Palestine, drawing closer to their goal. But the journey was long, fraught with hardship. The heat was unbearable, the water scarce, and the constant skirmishes with Muslim forces wore down the Crusaders. Disease began to spread, and soon Roderick could see his comrades falling ill one by one. He had seen death on the battlefield before, but this was different. This was slow, creeping, like a shadow that settled in their bones. His own body, once strong and full of vigor, began to weaken under the strain. He fought on, but there were moments when his breath came in ragged gasps, when his sword felt too heavy to lift. He prayed, as he had learned to do in those long nights in the camp, but it seemed that his prayers went unheard. The final assault on Jerusalem came in July 1099. The Crusaders gathered their strength for one last push. It was a siege that would last for days, an attack that would finally bring the city to its knees. The heat was unbearable, the city walls high and fortified. But Roderick, despite his weakened state, joined the charge. His body, though exhausted, was fueled by an unshakable resolve. Jerusalem was within their grasp, and he would not falter. At dawn, as the Crusaders launched their final assault, Roderick found himself at the front, leading a charge toward the gates of the city. The battle was fierce, the clanging of steel and the cries of men filling the air. It was then, in the midst of the chaos, that a Saracen warrior appeared before him, a fierce gleam in his eyes. The two men clashed, their swords meeting with a resounding crash. Roderick fought with all the strength he could muster, but his body betrayed him. His arm grew numb, his steps sluggish. The Saracen warrior, faster and stronger, drove his blade into Roderick's side. Roderick fell to the ground, blood pouring from the wound. His vision blurred as the world around him spun. The sounds of battle seemed distant now, as though they came from another life. He closed his eyes, not in fear, but in acceptance. The war was over for him. The city of Jerusalem would fall, and he would never see its walls from within. In the end, Roderick of Bordeaux never set foot inside the holy city. He died there, on the blood-soaked sands of the battlefield, as the Crusaders claimed victory. His name would be lost to history, a mere footnote in the annals of war, a fleeting echo in the song of conquest. Yet in his heart, Roderick had always believed that the journey was worth it, that by fighting, by sacrificing everything, he had fulfilled his purpose. The city of God might belong to others now, but for him it was the journey, the struggle, that had been his true calling. As his body was laid to rest beneath a bitter sky, the crusade marched on, and the wind whispered across the hills, carrying with it the names of those who had fought and died for a cause greater than themselves.